And you mentioned a minute ago I think it was the model of prevention. Could you talk a little bit what that is? I'm curious.
You know, I tell a story a little bit when I think about the idea of prevention, and it's about a village that lives by a river. Actually, Chase, I'm not even sure you've heard me tell the story before.
I have not.
And the people in the village would always go by the water, and that's where they got their water for cooking and for laundry and for drinking and all of those things. And one day, the people by the village saw babies floating down the river. And so, of course, they went into the river and they scooped up the baby and they took care of the baby and they didn't know where it came from. And then the next day it happened again and it happened again. And they kept seeing these babies floating down the river and they picked them up and they were taking the babies and taking care of them as if they were their own. And then finally this was happening so often that the village by the river got together and had a community meeting and said, okay, we have a real problem here. We have too many babies floating down the river. We have to go to the village up north, the next village up, to see what's happening there.
Mm.
And they said, but we can't because someone has to stay here to catch the babies. So they say, okay, well, half of us will go and half of us will stay. Because at this point, there is like a 24-hour, lifeguard situation waiting for babies to float down the river. And so they go up to the next village, and what do they find? They find that there's a hole in the fence. And that the babies who are out playing are going through the fence and they're slipping through and they're going down the river. And the question becomes, do we constantly sit as lifeguards or do we go upstream and fix the fence?
Mm.
And when I think about social work, when I think about situations like the state of relationships in our world now, we have to ask ourselves the same questions. Do we stay only as lifeguards and put a band-aid solution on? Or do we go upstream and mend the fence? Do we do the prevention work to make sure that that the babies aren't going through the fence? And when I think of the RAP program and the teen RAP program, I think does both. We have a lifeguard rotation and we also are, making sure that there's no holes in the fence. It's a little bit prevention and it's a little bit of intervention. And for the early RAP program, we're primarily a prevention program because we want people to have the skills to prevent them from getting into unhealthy relationships as they grow up.